Hi, this video is to show you how to use these additional widgets that are sitting on the right hand side of the map here. So we can start with the first one. First one's pretty easy. This is just search. And so here you can type in an address. I'm personally starting with just the postcode, C1JF, trying to not use my own postcode. That one is for the National Museum because I had to check that when presenting there because I also needed to not use my own postcode during a demo. So here you can see that that's both put a pin on the map and it's highlighted it. And so that pin will stay even as you turn on other layers that you want to interact with. My go-to is always just the Edinburgh Potential Heat Network zones. So if you wanted to answer that question of is the National Museum inside a heat network zone, the answer would be yes. But as you go about doing other things on the map, you might not want the point to still be there. And so that's where you do have to come click X, and that will make the point go away. If you're working within one of the lenses, if you've searched and added a point on one of the maps because they're all sharing the same map, you can end up with a situation where you end up with like a stranded point because it's stuck, but it's stuck on a different lens. I'll show you that here just in case you ever end up in that situation. This is where the lenses are based on the everything map, so it does take a bit more time to load in the background. But it should be actually that it's the same process for just turning it off, despite the fact that you're changing around lenses. So I'm going to go ahead and type while I'm waiting for the map to load in the background. So it's a poor demo if the map doesn't in fact load. Okay, so we can see, again, it just takes a long time because the lenses are based on the everything map, but it should now be faster. So let's see if we can get ourselves intentionally stuck to show how to turn it off. So here we go, we have our point, and if we jump over to the other lens, this building lens, this actually isn't going to be a problem because even though we might have put this on when we had the network lens on, we still have a situation where it's the same map and it's using the same widgets, so we haven't got a stranded point. If we want to get rid of it, we just click X. So that's the only kind of complicated thing about the search widget is that sometimes it can get stuck on. But if we go back to the main map, we can do the next widget down, which is this base map gallery. So this, at the moment, this base map, which is the map that's on by default in the background, you can see it's the Great Britain light gray, but you could change it to any of these other preset base maps. It's possible you might want something that's more of, say, an aerial imagery. So here we have this imagery hybrid one. Say you want to see like the ground truth of something, where a lake is or some trees. So you can get the satellite images this way. Or they have quite fun ones if you want to see what your data looks like on top of a mid-century map. We can see this one. It's a bit more fun. Also quite fun. Oh, haven't tried the colored pencil one, but here's this blueprint one. For the most part, I find that different base maps are actually just a little bit distracting from the data that you're trying to see. But depending on the story and narrative that you want to tell with the data, the different base maps might be helpful. But for me, I tend to just stick with this light gray one so that the information that you lay on top can really pop. And so that's the base map. Then we have this draw feature. So draw lets you add additional information on top. So let's see, say we were doing something with the existing heat networks in Edinburgh and we wanted to talk about potentially, so I know this is granted and it's being fed by a sewer source heat pump, but say we wanted to have conversations around like where's the heat going to come from, and you wanted to draw on the map to interact with your audience on that question. And so here you can't do freehand drawing, which is a little bit of a disadvantage, but if we wanted to say we have sources here, here, and here, we could use circles to do that. We have squares, we have polygons. That's kind of the closest you can get to a freehand drawing. we have lines, but then they don't connect up in the same way that the polygon did. And you could also then put points. So we're here, and we're going to do something over there, and you can affect the different types of points here as well. You can select features, but that's the main thing to do with drawing. You can also erase them, or again, you can put things back on. And a kind of handy thing is that as you're drawing, it turns it into a layer. And so you can turn that on and off if you, say, didn't want to erase, but actually just wanted to turn it off for right now, but bring it back on. Though do note that if you reload the map, this will also go away. But yeah, that's the drawing bit. So to close that down, we just click on the widget again to open and close it. Then there's swipe. So swipe at the moment has very limited functionality because it requires us in the background to have preset which maps you can interact with the swipe. So here, if you click on it, you can see these leading and trailing layers, and this gives you an idea of which layers use the swipe. But if you're just looking at the outer categories of the data here, the data categories, you might not know where those layers sit to know which ones can be affected by this swipe. So this is where the search functionality of the map layer widget can be helpful. So we saw that that was multi-spectral, and so that's begun to open up the adaptation category. So you can see it's under adaptation and then under heat. And we can see the multispectral data here. But there were actually two layers associated with the swipe. So if we turn off the search bit, we can now see the this Edinburgh Heat Risk Index demo. Let's go ahead and turn off Granton because we don't need that at the moment. So this is showing satellite imagery. So that's the multispectral Landsat. This is showing the thermal image of the ground. And then we've also done this additional demo to look at what are the hottest areas of Edinburgh if we look at the last 3 summers. And so you could turn this this layer on and off to see which areas of Edinburgh are hottest. This is where the swipe is helpful, because we can go up here and turn that swipe on, and you can also swipe the hottest areas on and off and compare that to the actual thermal imagery in the background. So that's the swipe, but again, it has to be used on layers that we've preset, and at the moment we only have them for that adaptation bit. So turn the swipe off. Similarly with filters, so these are preset filters, and at the moment we only have them for domestic or non-domestic EPCs. So if I go and turn the non-domestic EPCs on, you can see that by default we're seeing all the EPCs from A to G, and we can use these filters to say I only want to see the EPCs that are below C, so that will take much time, but here we can see these are only the worst performing buildings, or say I only want to see the EPCs that are C and above. You can use the filters here. But if you find that you want to filter some data and there isn't already a preset filter, that's where you can use this filter section here, and that's where it can be helpful to add the data to the table to see what's there. But you can say add a clause and say we wanted to filter based on not its current energy band, but we could filter based on the potential energy rating or the potential band, because that'll give us some categories. So let's say that it is, and if you go, so here you could just type something in, but the problem with just typing something in is that that might not be something that's actually in the data. So if you go to unique, this gives you a drop down of all the numbers that are actually in that data set at the moment. So if we go to A, we can go ahead and see that that goes ahead and filters based on the potential band for all of the buildings that could potentially be A. The symbology hasn't changed, so we're still getting A through C showing up here, but we're now filtering on a different property. And then the last bit is just the add data button, and we've made a whole different video about the add data button because there's quite some steps there. So yeah, that's all the collection of little map widgets on the side.